Hey everyone, just getting set up, getting ready to go. Hey everyone, so this is the first ever live stream for Moltin. This is kind of just going to show you how to integrate Moltin with another third-party API. One of the huge benefits of having an API like Moltin is it can integrate with other things. So while you may have a specific use case to sell online or buy or use any of the e-commerce APIs that we have, you're able to use that with anything that you currently have or would like to use in the future. So something that you can kind of just use and adopt incrementally, but also it can integrate with all of those other great services. So hopefully this video we can kind of figure out by the end of it how we can send emails using a third-party API called Postmark. So let's dive in, have a look at what Moltin is, where you can find out about using it, how we can use Postmark, and some of the tools and the developer tools that we're going to be using today to build out this email. So this is the Moltin website, very nicely put together, and it kind of describes some of the things that we're good and famous for. It's super simple to get started with Moltin. You can use an array of our SDKs, JavaScript being one of our most popular SDKs, completely open source, so if you're looking to get involved and extend functionality, you can as well. And we really love to see those open source contributions. So yeah, if at this point it's probably wise if you're following along and you want to code, you can. I'll probably watch this video back and take each step at a time and fully understand what we're doing. This video is quite fast paced, so it's going to show you. We're going to move around some of the services that we're using, and yeah, watch this video back and go through each step and understand exactly what each piece of the puzzle is doing as we dive into it. So sign up to Moltin. You just want to head on over to the sign up page, and then you'll get access to our dashboard, and then you will arrive there. You'll get your API keys and things as well. So one of the things that we're going to do here is obviously send some emails, and the service that we're going to be using is Postmark. So go ahead and sign up to Postmark if you haven't already. You'll get some tokens that you can use for development. You'll need to verify your email, so if you're going to do that now, head on over there and verify your email to get full access to your account. So I'm signed up already. I'm using some dummy data that I've created in a store that I've created on Moltin, so I've kind of just prepared that in advance. So let's head on over and see what we've got in Moltin. We actually may only have one store. Let's just check out and log in to that store. And I've got the password on my other screen. There we go. So we're logged into the dashboard here, and we've got one product called Moltin T-shirt, and it's got a price. If we dive in and have a look at some of the information in here, we've got a price, we've got some items in stock. It's got a SKU on there as well, and most importantly, the only things we're really bothered about for this is it has a name, it has a SKU, and it has a price. We're going to add it to the cart, and we're going to check out. So what I'd like to show you now is just what we're going to be building. So if you are following along, you can kind of see what we're going to be building ahead of time. So let me just open up Postmark and Insomnia and have all the things hooked up and ready to go. So if you've not used the Moltin API before, we have authentication for pretty much all endpoints. Authentication is required for all endpoints. And then we've got two types of authentication. We've got an implicit and a client credentials. The implicit authentication pretty much allows you to make a lot of GET requests and read requests to the API. You can do some things like add to cart and remove from cart, but then we have this client credentials authentication type as well. And that really allows you to manage your store to the fine detail of adding products to your catalog and creating relationships and product variations. It gets really advanced with the things that you can use this for. So dive into the docs and have a look about that, how it all works. But today we're just going to be using the events and the webhook system of Moltin and the cart endpoint. So let's have a quick run through of what's exactly going to happen here, and hopefully this will all work for us. So all I've done here is I've made a request, and I've made a request to the API to get an access token, and basically all I'm doing is pass along my client ID, and I'm passing along this grant type of implicit. And what this will do is fire me back an implicit bearer token that I can then use with other requests. So if I have a cart, and I'm going to create a cart here, I'm just going to call this Jamie's cart. I'm going to copy that because we'll need that in just a second. But I have this ID here of a cart item, and if we head back to Chrome, you'll see that this ID is in fact the ID that we're adding inside of Insomnia here. Then I'm just specifying a quantity. I only want one of these, so I am just popping that into the cart as well. And then what we can do is just hit return here, and it's actually made a request to the Moltin API, and it's added this cart, it's added this product to the cart as a cart item, and we get some cool things back here. Obviously we get the product ID, the product name and description. An image of it had, it will be populated in here, so you can use that on a cart page. And then we have this quantity. Now if I hit this URL again, this quantity would then be increased to 2. So it's not going to add multiple items to the cart. It's clever enough to figure out what you've already got in the cart, which is cool. So let's do that there. Finally, we're going to head to the checkout endpoint here, and we are going to check out the cart that we've just created. I've got some dummy data here, such as my email and name and a billing address and shipping address for this order. These parts aren't actually all that necessary for the order. We're going to be getting all of the information we need later inside of a function that will then deliver that email. So I'm just going to hit return here, and what we've done is we've created a new order, and we've created an order by hitting this checkout endpoint. And in fact, it's just the cart endpoint, but /checkout allows you to convert a cart to an unpaid order. Then with the unpaid order, you can apply your specific payment gateway, and if you want to use Stripe, Braintree, Adyen, PayPal, any of those, you can use all of our integrations and our manual gateway to configure exactly how that works. So it's really powerful for that. So now we've hit return and we have an unpaid order ID. The next step is to head on over to actually make a payment. So I've actually just gone ahead and created some data here. This is the payload required. This is going to create a new payment for the order that we've just created, and that is that order here. And all we need to do is pass along the gateway name, the purchase method. So it could be just capture. In this case, we are using purchase, and then the payment, which is the actual source or the token. And if you're building a front-end application, you probably want to use some of the, if you're using Stripe, some of the client-side libraries, so you can generate a token. So you can just pass that along to Moltin. You haven't got to pass any sort of credit card information. You can just let Stripe or your own payment gateway take care of all of that and be fully PCI compliant with that as well. So we are just going to hit send here, and this is then just going to head to Moltin, and we should get a 200 OK response. Now, fingers crossed, if all of this worked and I'm logged into the correct store, what we should see when we head on over to the order section is we've then got the order in the cart. So we've got this here. So you'll see we added 2 of these items to the cart, and then we checked out. And we checked out with my email and my name. And then we've obviously passed in the bill and email address here as well. Now, on this page, what we have is this custom field section. In the custom field section, it has this Boolean, and this Boolean is using our flows functionality. And I just want to cover what flows is and how you can use it in conjunction with what we're building today. It's actually really powerful, and it's not just custom fields. It allows you to create your own sort of resource within Moltin. So if you think of order as being a resource or a model, a database table, if you want to think of it like that, flows is its own. So you can create your own database table essentially, and you can have fields for the columns, then you can create data as entries. So what we're doing here is actually when an order is paid, we are sending an email, and then we're telling the order within Moltin, hey, look, I sent that email. Just let the order know. So if someone comes in here, they can go, okay, a customer who placed this order actually did receive the email, so they can, that kind of thing can help. And this could be used for sending text messages, or was the order shipped? You can put certain things in there. If you send the shipment information to a carrier, the carrier could return with the actual cost of the item if you're drop shipping. So there's so much functionality and flexibility with Moltin and using flows with orders. This is really powerful. So if I open up my mailbox, what I should see come in, I'm just going to drag my mailbox onto this window. We actually now have an email. So we have 2 items, and this was the price, and this was the name of the product. And it's got my name, and it's got the order ID as well. So this is the kind of thing that we are going to be building today, which I'm really excited about. So let's dive in and have a look at some of the tools that we're going to be using to do this. We'll take a short break, and then we'll get diving into writing some code. Cool. I'm just going to sign out of here, and I'm going to close this. We've already discussed Postmark. You should be set up on there already. The other tool that we're going to be using is Zeit. And what Zeit allows us to do, we have this now global deployment platform that pretty much allows you to just write some code, type a single word of now in your terminal. It pushes that code online, and you then have an immutable URL for it. And that's perfect for us because with Moltin webhooks, what we can do is tell Moltin to go pass some information to the URL that's hosted on now every single time there's a new order, or the order's paid, or the order's shipped. So we can have a look on how we do that. You'll need to sign up for now, and you'll need to install their CLI. If you haven't installed their CLI already, it's as simple as opening your terminal, and if you're on a Mac, it's just npm install -g, and then it's just now. And then once you're signed in, you should then just be able to run some commands, and then it'll tell you if you need to log in with your credentials, and then you pretty much are good to go and following this tutorial. I'm just going to clear my screen out for now for that. Next, let's once you're signed into Postmark, you're going to head to their dashboard. You may already have an example server. So if you don't see one, just create one. I'm going to create a new one, so let's follow along and do this. I'm just going to call this the Moltin webhook server. Could send multiple webhooks to it, so we can keep it super generic there. Let's give it a color for the label so it's easy to identify in that list as you add more servers. Now at this point, it's useful to know that we're in test mode and you can only send a certain amount of emails. So hopefully, we've got 100 chances today of getting this right. So hopefully we can write some code that sends some emails. And then down here below, we have some usage instructions on how we can use this within our code. And we'll come back to this and use this all later. The important thing is we actually have a server set up, and then once we're inside of Postmark, you'll want to head on over to the template section, and we're going to add a new template. We are going to code our own. It's very simple, as you've seen in the email, and we'll then just populate this editor here with our code. So we'll come back to this. So this is kind of the screen you should stay at within Postmark if you're following along. Let's just dive in and have a look at Moltin and how we use the webhooks. So I'm going to head down to events, and this is docs.moltin.com. This is our API reference. Completely open source if you want to make any contributions as well, which is really cool. We have this event object with Moltin, and this is the thing that's most useful to us when we are sending these emails. We have this event object, and every time an order is paid or it's updated, we have a look at all the observable events in just a second, but we get things like the name of the event, and then the most important thing for us is the actual resource that comes along as well. So let's dive in and have a look at the observable events, and then we'll have a look at the event payload as well. So there's quite a few things. These are obviously a few of our Moltin resources that we have that you can subscribe to any updates on. The most important thing for this is that we use the paid. So we'll be using this order paid in the future during this video. So when that webhook is triggered, it's going to send all of the data, and the data that it's going to send is kind of going to look like this. So we're going to get this resource. So if it's an order, you're going to get the ID, and you're going to get all of the other fields that it has, like order items that we can send and make a calculation and then send it via an email. So you can read all about that on there as well. We'll be using this create event endpoint, so you can see how using a tool like Insomnia or Postman or Paul, how you can actually make a request to the API that while you're authenticated to do this. So before we continue, let's just have a look at maybe deploying a quick function to now, so we can understand how that part works. We will be using a tool called Micro by now as well. And if I open up GitHub and we go to the Micro URL and we go to the Micro dev, the Micro tool, if you've heard or used something like the serverless framework that works with AWS Lambda, Microsoft Azure, all of those services, Micro is just a little simpler, and it works really, really well by Zeit. It's made by those guys. It just allows you to kind of just wrap a function and run that as well through the URL. So let's have a look at how simple it is to use. We can see we install it, we save it as a dependency, and then we just return some data. So let's take what we've got here and let's actually go ahead and now look to start to create our project, and we'll see how that works. So I'm set up a directory here, my tutorials directory. Just move into your own directory on your machine. I'm just going to create a directory here, and we'll just call this Moltin email hook. You can call this whatever you like. I'm using yarn as well. I prefer it. I think it's a little bit faster when resolving things. People don't think so, but for me it works really well, and I like that you can just say yarn start, yarn add. It just seems a little simpler. So we're just going to initialize a new package JSON. If we have a look at that package JSON, all we've got here is the name and the version, the name and the license, some of the required things for the package JSON to work publicly. So what we'll next do is we'll actually just add the Micro framework, the Micro library, to this as a dependency, and all you need to do is do yarn add Micro. If you use an npm npm 5 and above, I think, you can just do npm install Micro, and that'll install it and save it to the package JSON as well. If you're using a version before that, you'll want to pass in the save flag as well. One other thing is also the Micro dev framework, and then you'll want to install that just by typing that, and the -d saves it as a dev dependency. And we'll have a look at what the Micro dev framework does next. So if we just have a look at the package JSON again, you'll see that we've got Micro and Micro dev added, which is cool. I'm now going to open this directory within my code editor. I'm using Visual Studio. You can use anything you prefer. I'm just going to clear some of this out. It's not actually required. I'm just going to create this set private to true here, so I don't accidentally publish this to npm, and we can leave it at that. Let's go and have a look at microdev and how we can use that. So microdev is really powerful if you're building these functions in development and you want access to hot reloading and you want to see any of the console logs that happen. You can kind of get all of that, and the JSON looks really nice as well. So it does some pretty cool things. So have a look at the features. If you've not used this before, this may be helpful. If you've got your own kind of thing for building microservices, you may just want to use serverless. But we're going to use a micro and Z Now deployment service for this video. So we've already done this, we've installed it, and then next we need to just add these two scripts. So we've got micro installed, so when it's in production it'll run micro, which is a bit smaller, it doesn't have any development in the console logging and the JSON pretty fine and all of that. And then in development we run microdev, which has all of that. So inside of our code editor, all we need to do is just define these scripts here, and we can pop those in there. Then one other thing which I really like to use is prettier. When you're writing your code, it kind of looks a little nice. So what we'll do is we'll just create a file here. You don't have to do this. You don't have prettier installed. This might not make much sense. But all we want to do is just populate this file for prettier. So let's do that now. There. That should be good. If you're using VS Code and you've got prettier installed, you should see that you get a little green tick down here. Once you've added that, it means it recognizes prettier as in the project, and then you can go ahead and do it. Awesome. So next we're going to create a file. I'm going to call this index.js. And if you remember from the micro docs, all it said to us to do was to export a function with some text of hello world. And if we head back, we can see that we've got this here. It's exactly the same. Welcome to micro, hello world. What we should then be able to do inside of our terminal, now we have this, is just we can run yarn dev. Then it pops up and tells us, hey, you've got micro running on localhost port 3000. I want to open this up, and then we get hello world. So it's as simple as that. We've created a function that just exports some text for now. Later it'll export some good JavaScript that's kind of going to send and do some things with third-party APIs. But for right now, this is super, super simple. And then to deploy this to Now, all we need to do is type now. It'll come up with a warning if you're not paying for your plan. I've created an example organization here that I'm not paying for, so all the code that we're doing will be public. All this is going to be available on YouTube and GitHub after the stream anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So let's just wait for that to build, and then that will be available on a URL. This is actually super quick as well. It's installing those dependencies. It's going to ignore the dev dependencies, and it's just going to send this up to Zeit. It's going to give us a URL. So then if we hit that URL, we can then do it. So cool. The deployment was successful. You get a URL which is copied to the clipboard, and if we open that URL, we should see that we get hello world as well. And this is using this URL. Cool. So before we dive into writing some of the code, go in, get set up with your Moltin account and Postmark templates, and we'll be right back. Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're going to get started, and we're actually going to start writing some code. So I'm just going to close down my dashboard. The one thing I didn't show before, because we were using Stripe, the information that we sent through Insomnia actually sent that information over to Stripe as well, because we created a payment and we used the payment gateway. So all of that information is transferred over, like the amount and the card details as well. It's just sent straight over to those guys as well. So it's quite cool. This is another example of how Moltin integrates with other services. And in this case, it's Stripe, which is super powerful. So I'm just going to head back to my order screen. We're not going to need this just at the moment. We're going to dive in and write some JavaScript. And we're going to have a look at some of the libraries that we're going to be using as well. So let's dive in, have a look, and see what we need to do. Feel free to reach out in the comments. I don't think I have comments open. Schoolboy error. Got any questions? I can answer them. Any questions about Moltin? I can go ahead and answer any of them there. Cool. So now let's get coding. So all the code's on GitHub as well. If you need it as well, go ahead and check that out. Cool. So now we're inside of here. One of the things that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to have a look at getting some data and then doing something with that data and then send that data along to another service. We're going to need some packages with the micro framework to allow us to do this. So, we're going to need a router so we can accept post requests, because with Zeit you've seen that the URL that we had pretty much just allowed us to send a make a get request, make a post request, make a delete request. We can do anything to that URL. We're really only bothered about posts, so we kind of want to lock that down a little bit. And there's a few other things around security that we need to acknowledge when we are writing this function as well. So let's dive in and have a look at some of the things that we're going to need to do. I'm going to open up the micro documentation here on GitHub. And we kind of see what we need to do to import and use micro. So let's first of all look to import JSON and send from micro. And then the other thing we're going to need to do is include the router and the post method from micro router. Finally, we need to obviously import the cause library, and then we're going to instantiate that immediately as well. Another great library that we have at Moltin is the Moltin request library. The Moltin request library is a little bit more lightweight than our full JavaScript SDK. The JavaScript SDK has some really nice, sort of a really nice DSL for interacting with Moltin. So if you wanted to get all orders, for example, you just have moltin.orders.all, and then you could pass in some filter information in there and do all of that. But the Moltin request library, all that allows you to do is send sort of a get request, a post request, a delete request, and a put request. All within this library. Those are sort of nicely defined. Just checking the stream. Connection's still good. If any of this isn't really clear or it's a bit blurry, just let me know. Try and tweak some of the settings to do that as well. This is recorded as well, so this will be available afterwards. So the Moltin request. We're going to import that. We're going to instantiate with our client ID that I showed you with Insomnia before. And then in here, we're going to do all of the code that we need to do to send those emails. So let's dive on in. There's not a lot of code that we're going to be writing to do this. You're going to notice how easy it is to use this. So let's try that out. First, let's install micro router and micro cause. Micro router and micro cause. We'll go ahead and add that. It's installed, cool. And with that installed, we'll then install the Moltin request library as well. So now we've got that. We should just be able to do const. We'll create client from Moltin request, and then we need to obviously instantiate a new Moltin library, but we'll do that now. So let's do Moltin, and we'll assign this to a new, create client, and then we need to pass in our client ID. And the client ID is for your store, so I'm going to head on over to the dashboard and get the API key. I'm going to get my client ID, I'm going to copy that to the clipboard, and I'm just going to paste in my client ID here. If you're using env variables, you can just use this here, and we'll convert that at the end to use that with now. For simplicity, I'm just going to paste this in here. You wouldn't want to obviously push this to GitHub or anything. We'll do that as well. Finally, because we're going to be making a call back to Moltin to update that flag, we're going to be using the client secret, but we'll come back to it and we'll add that later on. So now we've got that, and that is working with the Moltin request library. We should be able to make some calls to Moltin. So let's have some fun. Let's install the Postmark library next. If we head back to Postmark and we open our server, the Moltin webbook server, and you see the library through npm is just called Postmark. So let's go ahead and install Postmark. Great, so Postmark is running. Now I'm going to run yarn dev, and that's just going to keep my environment all running as well. So I'll just save that file. So the file's not actually exporting anything, so it's not going to run. We'll get into that in just a second. Let's go ahead and configure some of this micro router and cores. Let's head on over to the documentation for those. Micro cores and micro router npm. Cool, so we've instantiated it, we've imported it correctly. Next is to instantiate it and actually use that as well. So let's figure that out. I'm going to be using a single word. It's 2018. So let's go ahead and do module.exports, and we're first going to export cores. We've imported cores. We need to obviously wrap everything in cores function. So we've imported it here, and we just need to obviously wrap our function that we export with cores, and we don't have to worry about the cross-origin resource sharing issues with the Zeit and Moltin talking to one another, or a front end talking to this. It's all fine. Cool. So then we need to obviously install the router. So let's do that. And then the thing here is going to be post, because we've imported this above. And that's pretty much just the root of that URL. I'm going to create an async function, and this obviously is micro taken over now. This is the actual function that we're telling micro to run, and then we're going to export that here. Now there is some security that I mentioned that we'll need to take care of, and one of the things that Moltin does, and it does really well, is when you use webhooks and you are Moltin will send some information to a URL, a payload. With all of that information, it will also be able to send along a secret key in the header, so you can make sure on the receiving end that the key matches up, and it's not just somebody trying to fool your system with some fake order data, because you could just post to an endpoint if you found out what the Zeit now URL was and just say someone's placed an order, this is it, and you could get an email, you could, it would be disastrous. So one of the things that Moltin does is gives you this really nice way of just adding a secret in there, so you can kind of just do this nice little handshake. So I'm just going to add a note here. So check headers for secret key. We'll do it in the sec. We're during development. We just want to be calling this without passing the header in every time. So let's go ahead and figure that out. Now, obviously, we need to get some data, and then we're just going to use a wait and use JSON that we imported previously from micro. And what this will do is just allow us to read that JSON for us and parse that for us nicely with the request that's coming in. So we'll pass in the request as well. And then we're just for demonstration purposes, let's just pop in send, and we'll pass in just, I don't know, the response. We'll just give it 200, okay, and we'll just give some text, hello, and we'll see what this does. So if we open up yarn dev, If we try and go to this now in our browser, nothing is going to happen. And that is because we have set the router and we've only set a function to resolve if it's a post request. So let's open up Insomnia. I'm just going to create a new request here. It's going to be a post request and test local micro function. I'm going to pass in the URL here. I'm just going to hit return, and there's invalid JSON, of course, because we haven't passed any. So if we pass in some JSON here, and we could just say, let's just put in hello with the key and then the value of world. We pass that in, and then we get hello back. We get that hello back because that's what we put here. Now, if we change this to be data, and then we run this again, we'll get hello world back. So it's taken in the JSON, it's able to parse it, and then when we're sending it again, it's able to pop that back out and spit it out in the response here. It's really cool. So now we figured out how to configure the router, how to configure the function, how to instantiate Moltin. We figured out that we can pass JSON data in, we can parse the JSON data, and we can send it a 200 response back. Of course, we could change this to a 201 for created. We could run this, and then we would get a 201 response, which is really cool. So we've got total control in this function of what data goes back. So if Moltin is sending you some data and you didn't want to send all of that back, we can use all of that and just send the data that you need back. That's not really important right now. What we need to do, we're going to do a few things in here. One of the things that we need to get from the data is the actual resource that Moltin provides and gives you. So as I mentioned before, if we open up the Moltin docs, these are the observable events, the actual payload. The resource comes through as a string, so we kind of have to do some extra parsing in order to make a response, do something and respond with that. So that's the only thing to bear out if you are following along with the response. Although you've kind of parsed the payload from Moltin, you also have to do an additional parse on the actual resource data that comes through. So it's just a little tricky thing to watch out for if you're following along using this. It's caught me out a few times. That'd be great if we can get that improved. So it really rapidly improves the developer experience with that. But right now, all you need to do is some parse. Kind of helps the developer not writing some more code, I guess. But yeah, it's really cool. I really liked it. So let's dive on in and write some more JavaScript, because JavaScript is awesome and we're not using semicolons. So big shout out to those people who don't love semicolons. Okay, cool. Now let's do that. Let's get the resource, and the resource is going to be equal to json.parse, and then we're going to do data.resources. So that's what Moltin give us, right? Yeah. It's a string. Resources affected by the event. So when someone pays, this is going to come through. That's going to work. Cool. And then what we can then do is look to destructure from some of that information. So I'm going to have some try catch blocks here, just so catch any errors that come around. Because I'm using the Moltin request library, I've got access to the errors as well. I've also got access to the status code, but in this case, I'm just going to send on a 500. Something went wrong. It was a server error, so let's just forget about it and tell the user and exit this function altogether. And then we can obviously pass the user along. It's inside of this try block that we can do some destructuring on the actual resource that we get. And what we really need to do is we need to destructure the ID, the customer's name and email, and then meta information about that order, and also the included items for the order. So if we head to the API reference and we head to orders, this is all the information we're able to sort of destructure. This is all sent to us for an order. So this is what the payload will contain. So we've got access to all of this, and we've got access to this meta information with all of the total prices for the order. All the relationships, we get the items for the order as well, and we can get data about that relationship as well. So if the relationship is a product, we can get the product's name and the product's price and all of that, and we can then send it back to the user. So a few things we're going to need to destructure inside of the email that we're going to send to the user is going to be obviously the name, how many items are in there now, and also the quantity for the item as well. So let's go ahead to have a look at the code and add that in as well. So let's just destructure. We're going to destructure it, but let's do that. Obviously, data. This is going to be. It's going to come from resource. So this resource above contains all of this data. So let's just destructure some of that data as well. We're going to just need to drill into data because that's inside of the payload that comes. We need to grab the order ID. We need to grab the customer, and we'll destructure from the customer the name. And we're going to reassign the email. Sorry, we're going to reassign email to 2, and then we're going to grab the name of the customer as well. Then we're going to grab the meta information. That's going to be the display price with tax. It's going to be display price dot with tax. Where is it? There it is. With tax, and then the formatted order total. So that will be here. So let's go ahead and grab that now. Display price with tax formatted. So that's going to give us the tax inclusive formatted total based on the currency. Okay, cool. I don't like the name of formatted for this function when we send the data along. It makes more sense because Postmark is going to expect a variable called order total. So let's just go ahead and rename that. And then very lastly, outside of data, we've also got access to included. And then from the included array down here, should get it, where is it? Relationships. This will come through as included, and then we can get the items from that as well, which is what I'm doing here. So because I'm using Prettier and I've hit save, this is just kind of format this and it looks a little bit nicer, and I think it's much easier and less to think about when writing code. So install Prettier if you've not seen it. It's really cool, really helps when you're doing things like this. You just kind of write some code, hit save, let someone else worry about how it looks. Finally, what we need to do now is make a request to Postmark, passing in all of these variables, and then send an email. So let's have a look at how we can do that. So using the Postmark, we first need to instantiate Postmark and the client with the API key, and then import it, then use the send email. There's actually another function called send email with template. We're going to be using that. We're going to be passing in a template ID and then the template model data. So we don't have to kind of hard code everything in like this, and we can kind of use an existing template on Postmark. So let's go ahead and instantiate Postmark. Then let's go to Postmark, create a template, get the template ID, and then we can put that back in the code, and hopefully that makes sense, and we can do all of that. So just at the top here, because I've already installed Postmark, if you've not done that already, you'll want to run npm or yarn install Postmark, and that'll install those libraries. So let's include Postmark client, and then that's going to be new Postmark dot client, and then we need to pass in the Postmark key. We can find that Postmark key within the credentials tab, I'm guessing here. Okay, this is the token here, and then we'll pass this in here, and then we've got that token, and Postmark is all configured. And then let's head on over to the template section. So I'm inside of my server. Let's have to check the server. We're using the right server here. So yeah, make sure that you're using the right server here. So I'm using the Moltin webhook server. Just going to check those credentials again. Maybe in the wrong one. Yeah, so we had the wrong sort of API token. That's fine though. Let's head to the template section, and then we're next going to kind of add template, and we're going to code our own. Inside of here, I've got some HTML already created. It's very, very basic. This will be available in the comments, so check that out. If you're following along, this is what it looks like. All you really need to care about is the body here. And the body contains just a paragraph of thanks for your order, customer name, and then includes the total for the order. So if you're looking at this and you see order total, well, we've kind of reassigned the order total for the formatted display price with tax. So you can kind of see where we might be using that next. And then we've obviously got this table which contains the name, the quantity, and the total of items in the cart, or all the items that were in the order. So that's cool. Let's just give this a nice name so we can easily refer to it later. And this is a subject for the email as well. Order confirmation from Moltin. And then order confirmation for the name of the template. So we're going to hit save. And this was saved. And then if I hit send test, I can send a test to my email, and that will go ahead and send that email. So if you want to test that out and you want to add some fake values, we can add this in here, and that will update the name here in the order, and then obviously you can send another test, and you will get those through as well. I'm just going to open up my email in the background here, and then we can hopefully see that those come through, and then we can do that. So let's open up the email. Check my spam. Just load my email. Cool. So we've got these emails that came through. So we'll just pop these onto a new screen. What you'll see, we had that first email I sent, which didn't contain the customer name. That was just a test. And then obviously we've got the third one we sent, which has Jamie tested. So already we're seeing how easy it is to have some HTML, and we can create an email template, and then we can send that via an API to an email. Probably nothing new to anyone that's following along, but what I find really nice is the next step is we're actually going to integrate Moltin with Postmark. So when you are creating an order, it can do all of this automatically, which is really cool, I think. So now we've got this template. All we need to do is just make sure it's saved. And then this is the template ID and the top right here. It's quite small, hidden away. We'll need that. So what we'll do is I'm just going to create a const up here, and we're going to call this the Postmark template ID, and we'll just paste that ID in there as well, because we're going to need that in just a second. So I'm just going to open up the Postmark npm package. Let's have a look on npm for Postmark and just see what things we've got available. So with template. Okay, so this is going to be one of the things we're using here, as we're instantiating the Postmark client, and then we're going to be actually sending our email, but with a template. We're not just going to send some sort of random text or blank HTML. We actually want to provide a template. We're not going to provide the template from our function. We're going to rely that that template already exists with Postmark, and all we're going to do is provide the data it needs to send that email. So let's go ahead and just pop that to one side, and let's have a look how we can next do that below. I'm going to run await Postmark client, and then we will do send email with template. We'll add a from address here. That from address, I'm just going to put in my email. I think you have to verify your account before you can send it from others, and you have to obviously verify that domain at a DNS level to make sure that you own that domain, so you're not just sending emails from anyone. Then we're going to specify who this email is going to, and we can do that by up here we reassign the customer's email to be to, so we can just kind of leave this and then hit a new line, and all that's going to do is make sure that to is that the email is going to is the customer that placed the order with Moltin. Then finally, what we need to do is pass in the template ID, and obviously we assign that to a const above here. So this is just going to get placed into here, and then we need to finally pass in the template model. And the template model contains, where has it gone? It contains the from, the template ID to, the model contains all of our properties. So the properties are completely up to us, what we specify those to be. So the customer name is going to be the name, and then it's going to also contain the order reference, which is the ID. Contains the order total, which is order total, and then the order items is going to be items. And then obviously, if we have a look at the template we had, we edit that template. Order items we've got that here, and that items is coming from the included relationship from Moltin. The customer name is here, so that should be underscore name, and then that will pass in the customer name as well. So we've got access to all of this as well through items. So we're pretty much good to go. We've just declared all of our variables above. We're not using any. We seem to be using everything there. So as far as I'm concerned, this function is pretty much good to go. Not a lot of code, as you can see. All we're doing is we're accepting some data here from Moltin, and then we're just passing it along to another service, and we're able to authenticate with Moltin and do that. So let's next have a look how we can get this function actually deployed and working in use with Moltin. So let's figure that out now. We have an error as well. Postmark is not defined. That will be, what will that be? Yep, we haven't included Postmark. So let's include Postmark above. Yep. Then we hit run yarn dev again, and then you'll see we have this run as well. I'm just going to grab that URL. I'm going to head to Insomnia. I'd like to just check that things are working still. We're sending hello world. The service here, it's not expecting hello world at all. So it can't really do anything. It can't destructure from you that. So it's just erroring. There's not any great errors that's coming from Postmark here. If we commented this out and head to Insomnia, let that run, check that server's running. Okay. Resources defined. Check exactly what's going on. Okay, it's working. Just have to restart. And then yeah. So we're trying to destructure, obviously from data that we're not passing in. So it's just going to error. That's nothing for us to worry about right now. Let's just have a look at how we then would deploy this function, and then how we would tell Moltin about this function. So I'm going to, inside of here, we've got all of the credentials that we need. We don't actually need Moltin at this point as well. We're not actually updating Moltin, so that's really not required right now. I'll leave it in because we may come to that. The important thing is we have Postmark, and we have the correct template ID, and all of that is working as well. Now if I just type the words now, it's going to take this function and it's going to deploy it to Zeit now. It's going to give us a URL. We've got the URL here. So while that's just deploying in the background, let's head on over to Insomnia and have a look at using integrations with Moltin. So I can do a request here, and I can make a request to Moltin. You need to be authenticated, and I need to be authenticated with the client credentials authentication. And this is because all of this information is a little bit private, and you wouldn't want to expose this to anyone. So let's now authenticate. Now we authenticate, we've got an access token. We then just need to run this URL again, and this is just api.moltin.com, and then the version is v2, and then if we make a GET request to integrations, we'll get all of the integrations back inside of this data array. So we have one already, and this is what I showed you at the beginning of the video. is this this integration here, and obviously it's got a few things like a secret key, which I discussed how you can kind of secure your webhook down. What we need to do is create another one of these. So we need to just make a post request to that same. We need to then pass in the URL. And what I'll also do as well is also set up that secret key as well. So if we head on over to the Moltin docs, wherever it's gone, and we head to create an event. This configuration, we need to get the configuration object, and the configuration object contains secret key. This will useful. So send the header as x moltin -secret -key, and that's how we can kind of protect that endpoint. So let's head back to Insomnia, and we'll add secret key in here. I'm just going to set this to ABC. Doesn't really matter, and then we'll make a request. Your current guide type does not have the required permissions to fulfill this request. Not sure what's going on with that. Let's make another request. Let's grab the access token, make a request. Let's just check the header is the correct one. I'm just going to pass in my bearer token again. Just make sure that's all done. We'll make the request again, and there we go. We get a 201 response. That we've created a Postmark order confirmation webhook. That's what I've named it. I've given it a description. It's enabled, and I've sent across that URL, and also sent across the secret key, ABC. And then, most importantly, it observes when an order has been paid. So once an order is paid within Moltin, it will fire this webhook. It will send all of the data in the payload to this URL, and then we can destructure that and then pass that on to Postmark. So hopefully now we should see that is working. So if we make a request to get all, we should see we have 2 in here now. So we've got the one that we had before, then we've got this one here. So what we're probably going to find is if we make another order, is we're going to get 2 emails. We need to check that Zite now has deployed, which it has. We've got the URL here, which Moltin knows about. And then all we need to do now is just get an authentication key, add an item to the cart. We'll call this Jamie's cart 2. It doesn't matter, this cart ID has, we can just check out the same cart again, but I'm going to add a new cart, so we've got 1 item. We're going to check out the same cart as well, with the same information, and then we're going to pay that order as well. So that's successfully been paid. And if we head to the Moltin dashboard, should see that we've just made a payment at $3.55. It's a 1 item for the t-shirt, and then this field's been updated by the previous webhook that's running. It's got the customer name and email as well. So that looks, the order looks to have gone through successfully. We now just need to check to see whether or not we've got that email. So let's open up my email, see if we have that. And open up the folder for our emails. We should see that we have an email here, and this is for a Moltin t-shirt 1. That was my name, and that was the order as well. So great. We've got that integration is running. It's coming to Moltin. It's doing all the information. It's grabbing all of that information about the order, and then it's passing it on to Postmark. I'm going to take a quick break here, and we'll come back. We'll just secure this endpoint very quickly, show you how you can do that, and then we pretty much should just be good to go. I'll show you how you can use flows to update the flow to check whether or not the message has been sent. So I'll check back, and we'll do that in just a second. Hey guys. So yeah, just checking this code. Just checking that everything's running fine. I think this is obviously an issue template model. So what we'll need to do is just change that to be template model. Then we can run now, and then that will deploy to now, and then that will allow us to send the information onto Postmark. So it's deploying. We've got a new URL. What this does mean is we now need to add another integration to our store because we now have a new URL. You could use now and you could alias that URL, so you didn't have to kind of update the integrations every single time. But for us, what we'll do is we'll just have a new one. It's very quick, very cheap to do. So let's just do that. I'm going to first of all delete the other one, which is this one here, so you can kind of see how the Moltin API works. Let's add a new request. Delete integration. Let's delete request. Create. That's not the URL. The URL is api.moltin.com/v2/integration/d. Pass in authorization header. Grab the header and token from this request and pop it over here. Then we go, and that will then delete that integration. So if we hit run again, we should just have that integration. Now, if we go to create a new integration, this time with this new URL that's successfully deployed to the site now, then we hit return. That should add it. If we go get all integrations again, we should have this integration now. Then if we just go back to adding a product to a cart, we have this cart. Let's add another item. This quantity will add to 2. Once you check out a cart with Moltin, the cart isn't deleted. It'll be about 7 days after it was last touched. It will be deleted. So this is why when we've added this cart item to the same cart with the same cart reference or ID, this quantity is changed to 2. Let's check out this cart. I'm going to pass in my email and I'm going to pay for this order as well. Then what that'll do is then pass along to the serverless function, and then using the correct spelling of template model, it will then populate and send along. So if I open my emails now, what we should do is we should have 2 emails. We should get 1 email from the previous integration that we had, and then we should get 1 email from the new one. So this is the one that we already had. Obviously looks exactly the same as the one we created, but this one here, you'll see the subject is different because this is the subject that we created Postmark. So there we have it. This is successfully calling out to now when you create an order via a Moltin webhook. Then it's then passing all of that information along to Postmark, and then it sends an email, which is really cool. And you can really customize these emails as well. It could have in your logo. It could have some. It could be in the center of the screen. It could have a nice print version, so people can print those as receipts. This is completely flexible, and it's completely up to you how you integrate it. Postmark is just one service that I personally have used before. You can use SendGrid, MailChimp, and Mailgun, and all of those. But Postmark is a real nice transactional email service that you can use for this. So with that done, that's excellent. The other thing is obviously just that secret key. Let's just finally tidy up the function here so we can kind of lock this down. We don't want to have this function on the web that has control. If we send in the name and email and the formatted price to this URL, anyone can just start sending emails and send that email template. We do not want that to happen. So what we need to do here, before anything runs in the function, is we just need to have some sort of conditional here to say, well, let's await the request headers coming through, and we'll get the secret key. And if this secret key is not equal to, the secret key that you would keep on your service, in this case it's ABC, because that's what I created when we created the integration, we then just need to do a return to stop everything there, and just do a 401, unauthorized. So if we save this, we deployed this, and then try to run this through Moltin and we change the secret key, it wouldn't work because we've already got set up with the ABC as the secret key. It just all works, and it all works nicely and securely, which is what everybody wants, all right? So I'm going to wrap this video up here. In the next video, I'd love to cover sending SMS messages and all of that. If you've got any specific videos, just reach out to on Twitter that you'd like me to cover with the Moltin API. Hopefully this has been fun. It's kind of one of the first live streams we've done at Moltin here. We want to kind of do more of them. But hopefully this has given you an insight into how you can use Moltin with a third-party API. And then we can we'll expand on further concepts as we go. But check out moltin.com, check our API reference. It contains all of the information you need to get started and get set up and making your very first API request. If you head on over to developers.moltin.com and you head out over to the section called Your First API Request, what this will do is walk you through a bunch of different scenarios depending on the type of SDK you want to use, and it'll walk you through doing all of that. So that's it. Any questions, please reach out to me on Twitter or via email. It's jamie.barton@moltin.com, and we can talk about all things commerce there. Have a good one, guys.